Have you ever just stopped and wondered, really wondered, what happiness actually is? It's a question we all wrestle with, don't we? Well, today we're going to go on a little journey, a trip through centuries of thinking to explore this idea that maybe, just maybe, the answer isn't something you find out in the world, but something you build right here, inside yourself.
So, what is happiness? It sounds like such a simple question, but man, it's a deep one. This single question has basically fueled centuries of philosophy, politics, you name it, even our own personal searches for meaning. It's this timeless, fundamental question about what it means to be human.
All right, so here's our game plan. We'll start with this timeless quest for happiness, then we'll check out what some brilliant French thinkers had to say. After that, we'll jump over to the American ideal, and finally, we'll bring it all home with 3 inner pillars that can help us find happiness right where we are.
You know, this search for happiness is nothing new. It's a deeply human thing, a drive that connects us to people who lived hundreds, even thousands of years ago. So the real question is, what can we learn from them? What kind of timeless wisdom can they offer us today?
Okay, so our first stop on this journey is France. This is where some really influential thinkers started to champion this idea that happiness isn't, something you find like a lost set of keys. It's a state of being you actually have to cultivate. They turn their attention inward.
And first up, we've got Michel de Montaigne. Now, this is a guy writing way back in the 16th century, and he basically said the journey to a good life, a happy life, starts with getting real with yourself, like really honest self-examination. For him, it wasn't about the job, the money, the external stuff. It was all about achieving what he called internal alignment.
And this idea of internal alignment was pretty revolutionary for its time. What does it mean? Well, it means you stop looking outside for approval. You stop needing everyone else to tell you you're okay. Instead, happiness starts to bubble up from just accepting who you are, flaws and all. It's about taking care of that relationship you have with yourself.
Okay, fast forward about a century, and Voltaire comes along. And he kind of takes his whole philosophical quest and brings it crashing back down to earth. He saw how absurd the world could be, and he landed on a very practical, very simple truth. Happiness isn't just about thinking. It's found in doing. And that leads to his most famous line, "We must cultivate our garden." Now, he wasn't literally talking about planting roses, right? It's a metaphor. It's about taking responsibility for your own little patch of the world. For Voltaire, happiness is something you create day by day through small, meaningful actions. Then you have Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who took this a step further. He looked around and basically said, you know what? Society is making this way too complicated. His solution was to get back to basics. He believed real joy is found in the simple things, in nature, in a simple life, and most importantly, in actually listening to what your own heart is telling you.
All right, now for a more modern take, and this one might be a little challenging. Let's talk about Albert Camus. He looked at life and saw that it's often messy, full of contradictions, full of struggle. But here's the twist. He didn't see that as a reason you couldn't be happy. In fact, he thought maybe, just maybe, that struggle was the whole point.
And he illustrates this with the myth of Sisyphus. You know the guy, doomed to push a giant rock up a hill only to have it roll back down forever. Camus says, one must imagine Sisyphus happy. Happy? How? Because in that moment of accepting his fate, of embracing the struggle itself, he finds meaning. Happiness for Camus becomes this act of rebellion, this defiant choice to find beauty right in the middle of a difficult life.
Okay, now let's hop across the Atlantic and look at a really different way of thinking about this. The American ideal didn't just see happiness as an internal feeling. It framed it as a political right, something that should be protected, a freedom for every single person.
So here's the contrast in a nutshell. The French thinkers we've been talking about, they were all about the inward journey. Self-knowledge, authenticity, that kind of thing. The American perspective, on the other hand, was more focused on the external conditions. It was about creating a society that gives you the freedom and the opportunity to go out and flourish.
And this is a super important point. That famous phrase, the pursuit of happiness, was never a promise that you'd be happy. It wasn't a guarantee of a result. It was a guarantee of the freedom to try, the freedom to seek it out in your own way, to choose your path, to build a life that has meaning for you.
So, okay, we've got these two seemingly different ideas, the internal journey of the French and the external freedom of the American ideal. But what's really fascinating is that, well, they kind of lead to the same place. Both paths, in the end, point to the idea that real, lasting happiness has to be built from the inside out. Let's dig into that.
And this whole idea of cultivating happiness from within, it's not just some fuzzy, abstract concept. It's actually built on 3 really concrete practices. Think of them as 3 pillars that take all this philosophy and make it real, something you can actually do in your life.
So what are they? It's pretty simple, actually. They are gratitude, openness, and presence. Let's break down what each of those really means.
First up is gratitude. And look, this is way more than just saying thanks. It's an active practice. It's about consciously shifting your brain's focus from what you don't have to what you do have. It's like training a muscle, training your mind to see the good that's already there. And when you do that, you start to free yourself from that constant, exhausting chase for more, more, more.
And the beautiful thing is, you don't need big, dramatic things to be grateful for. It's found in the small stuff, the really ordinary stuff. That quiet moment before the day gets crazy, the feeling of a warm cup of coffee in your hands, a genuine smile from someone you love. These are the little gifts that are all around us, all the time.
All right, pillar number 2, openness. This one is all about loosening your grip. Letting go of those rigid expectations we all have about how life is supposed to go. When you can approach life with a sense of curiosity instead of fear, you open yourself up to so much more, to growth, to connection, to a much richer experience of the world.
And last, but definitely not least, we have presence. This one might just be the most powerful of all. Think about it. How often are our minds somewhere else? We're either replaying the past or stressing about the future. But guess what? Happiness doesn't live in the past or the future. It only happens right here, right now. Presence is the key that lets you actually experience the life you're living in this very moment.
So, after this whole trip, from ancient philosophy to modern thought, we land on one core idea, the big takeaway that ties everything we've talked about together.
And it's really this. Happiness isn't a destination you arrive at. It's not something you can buy or achieve. It's an inner garden, to borrow from Voltaire, that you have to tend to every single day. You cultivate it with gratitude, with openness, with presence. And the most amazing part? The potential for that happiness has been inside you this whole time.
And so, that brings this huge philosophical question right back down to you, right now. Because after all this talk, the real question isn't just what is happiness in theory, it's how are you going to choose to cultivate it in your own life. So I'll leave you with this. Where will you find your happiness today?